Good afternoon, everyone. Sunday here. There goes the weekend. Looking at some form of homemade drag. After putting the chain on the tractor last night and seeing how well it worked to smooth it out, I decided to go drum up as much chain as I could around here. Went and borrowed some from the neighbors. And this is what I came up with. So, it's basically a long line with loops in between, 3 of them, with the heaviest chain on the back. It's working great. The only problem I'm still having is because, well, how things work out, if you take a big chain and then drag it forward, it does this. And that's what we're left with, is that's pretty much the minimum size it gets. So, eventually I'm going to try to put in a sort of spreader bar of sorts. It could be even made out of wood, just something to ensure a minimum diameter kind of deal. Now, up here, we have a sort of trailer frame, the front of the tongue, where you would drag it. We pierce some holes here, just with an oxyacetylene torch. Just enough so we could hook on it and drag the chain part of it behind it. In the ideal version, I would have a ton of these hoops in here. You'd probably just see like hoop, 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 hoop. So I might go back and try to get a lot of more chain in the future and add it in. And then we have the, I guess you could call this the yoke portion of it. What hauls the rest is just hooked up with a basic chain, which is double knotted around my drawbar. I did initially have it hooked to this, but I wasn't liking it, and that, I'm not even wanting to get close enough to it. All you need to know is there's a black widow hiding in my tractor. I hate widows. Yeah, what was I saying? Try not to reach in there anymore without looking, obviously. I had it hooked up here and I was having an issue where it was lifting the chain off the ground and not much of it as I wanted was contacting the soil. And so my solution to that was to put on the drawbar, and I can actually now use the box scraper to push down on the chain slightly to make sure that it stays taut and doesn't sling around as much. Now, the cool part is my neighbors have like old stuff. This is a grater blade off of like a 1920s grater or something like that. It looks really, really old. Like one of the ones you see horses dragging behind them. And what I'm going to do is take this beast and try to lay it back right behind the yoke, right after the chains, maybe right about here. And it's not going to be straight. All the finished graters I've seen have it like angled. And what it ends up doing is instead of just the dirt being redistributed perfectly, it kind of makes the dirt move along to this side or whatever side you have it angled towards, and leaves more dirt there than the rest. So it ends up having a nice edge or crown, depending on which side you have it on and which way you drive. So that's my plan. One of these hooks isn't really, it's like really bent, and I'm worried about it slipping out. I don't know if we can see it here. I can never see stuff on my camera in the sun, but later it looks okay. But if we were to look at this hook, it's not straight like it should be. It's really bent, and so I'm worried it might pop out. So I might just take this chain, wrap it around, put a bolt through it, so that I bypass the hook, essentially. And, well, rely on a bolt, but what are you going to do? Alright, let me go see how heavy this thing is and if I can even grab it with one hand. I doubt it. Well, I can, but it's about 90 degrees. I mean 100 degrees. 120 20 degrees. Woo, woo. Too hot for me to grab. I'm gonna go grab a rag, then grab it, put it on the ground where it needs to be. Okay, so these are 1/2 inch by 5 inch long threaded rods. They're pretty beefy. They're for like putting in concrete work and stuff. What I'm doing is I'm considering using these as almost like a tooth or a tine in order to help break up the washboard compaction, because there are certain circumstances where the blade isn't going to do its job and be in full contact with the ground like it should. And so in that case, it would allow these to, like, you know, go into the soil and actually break something up. We'll see. So I had to disassemble it because there's only one chain that could accept the 1/2 inch diameter bolt in between the link. So I disconnected that dark chain I have, which was over here, and I've shortened the first U quite a bit. In fact, it's no longer a U shape. So what I've done is this chain is still hooked here and is going this direction. I then have a 1/2 inch threaded rod, which comes up from underneath it with washers on both sides, also with nuts on both sides. It essentially pins the blade underneath the chain. I have it going at a steep angle over here to the other one. Did the same thing. It looks a little different though, because I just decided to take this weird hook. You can see how messed up it is now, and this just slipped right over it, and so I just put another nut there, and now this chain is just attached pretty nicely and won't slip off because of that cruddy chain. Now, because this one doesn't have a hook on it, I bound it with some baling wire, and I'm too lazy to take it apart and move it. And because of how I attach the blade to this chain, it's changed the shape. And so what I've done is I was like, whatever. Let this chain stay wild, if you will. Took the other end with the hook on it and attached it over there to the other side of this chain. Okay? And I did that because I wanted to give myself a line over here to attach another chain to, which I'm about to do in a moment. So now I've attached this chain here, fallen it back underneath this Omega chain here. And what I'm going to do is to make it easier on myself, as easy it is working with hot iron or steel chain in 105 degree sun. And then I'm going to walk back this way, and it kind of loops itself. And then I give myself an attachment point right about there, or so. And then that is the next loop, and then I take that fat chain, attach it to the, not really the end, but somewhere up here, you know, above it, on both sides, and then that'll complete my third loop, and then I'm technically good to go. The only thing I have to do is I have this extension cord running in front of the tractor to the nursery, and I gotta disconnect it and throw it on the other side of the road. My wife told me not to die of heat exhaustion on her way out. Ha ha, but man, she may have been a little serious. Whew, here's a hot one today. Well, here we are. The world's most hacked together finish grader with chain drag. We'll see how it goes. It's better than nothing at all, right? I'm gonna go give it a test run. But before I pass out, I'm gonna grab some water. Oops, I'm in rabbit gear. Let's try this again. See that? This is where the blade is not contacting. It's floating in the high spots. This is how it's built. Look at that. My goodness. Oops, I think I was forcing it to dig into the ground because the scraper box was too low. I need to save my breaker bar. Okay, so scraping here in the front. So this is a little too heavy and is digging into the sand. And then it's kind of redirecting. It's acting as like a side plow, really. Coming this way. And then it's digging in the center here because of the shape of the front. So I might end up cutting that off, joining it together, and then just putting an eye on the front that I can drag it with so it doesn't cause this weird shape. It's also all wonky, so whatever. The blade is cutting sort of in certain circumstances. I thought it would be really messed up with that like bow shape, But as we come along here, this cuts, and then this starts to get the clump from the cut and drag it, and it gets caught in all the chain links, and then it gets released through, caught in that one, and then it continues back, same thing. This kind of just flaps around, distributing it. And then here, if we go back, it's not bad. The newbiness of the driver coming around the turn definitely added to its crappiness, but I think it's going to do really nicely on the road. I'm going to go give it a test drive. So a quick and dirty solution was to take the chain that was just passed underneath the 3-point attachment here and to go over and under. And now what I can do is I can raise the hitch and control how high that floats off. It will put a little wear on here from sliding back and forth, but whatever. Good to go. It's been about 24 hours or so. Don't know if you can tell by the layer of dust and everything on the tractor, but I put it to good use. So I've graded 4 miles of road, and that's a lot as far as a slow tractor goes. I made a couple mods, and I just wanted to go over them before I put up the video. So the first issue I was having is that when I had the blade attached very close to this edge, it wasn't actually in contact with the ground very much. Alright, and it was kind of flailing around. So what I did is I took the yoke, we took a cutting torch, pierced a hole in the bottom of the C-channel. I then have a 1/2 inch stud coming up through a hole where the blade is attached. So now it's fixed here and acts as a pivot point. And so I can change the angle of this blade at whichever angle I want to set it at. I then have a 1/2 inch bolt coming up through here on the chain that's big enough to accept the bolt. After I did that, it freed up a lot of chain, and so then I have 1, 2, 3, and 4 chains behind it. One issue I think I'm having is that this chain in the center is too short right here, and so it's causing a binding of this hoop. The other issue, one that I hope to figure out and solve, is that it drags. If we back up here and get a profile, you can see how far off to the side it is, you know. It drags way out here. Kind of like a water ski, you know. I never water skied personally, I always got drowned when I tried. But I've seen people do it, you know, like the boat's up here and then the guy's way back here and they're able to do this, right? Because they pivot on the boat, kinda. And that's the problem I'm having with this. Because there's only one single tow point, and then this is at the behest of the road conditions and can just do this and that or the other thing. However, it's predictable. It favors this side. And so when I want to grade the right side of the road, I steer or stay on the left side like I'm in Europe, and when I come back I do the opposite. I think it's really doing a great job, to be honest with you, for how quick and dirty it was to set up. It was a lot of labor to mess around with these chains in the hot sun. If I would have been smart about it, I would have waited way longer before I mess with it, but I'm an impatient person. One thing I've noticed is that these chains do a great job of distributing everything like over a long area. You know, all these rocks used to be concentrated like right here, and this has now taken them and distributed them pretty evenly over a long distance. Which is the point, right? Is to distribute material from like a high spot to fill in a low spot, or to cut off the tops of washboard or the bumps and fill it in. Not bad for a day's modification and work. I almost just want to replace this yoke and have just a bunch of blades with chains behind it, but you know, this is definitely good enough for now. Another thing that's amazing about this is that somehow it pops up boulders better than this box blade here. Like, look at all these here that are just popped up. They were sunken pretty much down in there, but it's done a great job of pulling them up. Hopefully all the people that drive between here and the 4 miles or 2 miles up will watch out for boulders.